It's 4:30. It's March 14, 2017. I'm going to call this meeting of the Moorhead Public Service Commission to order. Could I have a motion, please, concerning our agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I know that Mr. Regala had a few items that he wanted to take off our consent agenda. Would you like to tell us which ones those are, John?
I would like to take off number 12, 13, and 14 for discussion purposes.
Okay. With the removal of those three items from the consent agenda, could I have a motion to approve it? Or
I'm move to approve the changed consent agenda.
is there all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That motion also carries. Any customers to be heard?
Nope. Oh,
Any recognitions?
nope.
Beyond the city manager, who's now come in, welcome. Any old business?
Nope.
Well, this is moving right along.
Yep.
Any messages from the city council? Or, let me change it. Any reports from the city council?
Just that all your items that you had on our agenda last night were passed on the consent. That's all I had to report.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's your report?
I could make stuff up.
No, you're doing well. That works. That works.
Thanks for that.
Yes. Members of the Public Service Commission, I know that at least one of us has a complete report, having spent some time in Washington, D.C.
Complete report. I don't have a voice, but I can report that I did travel with Mr. Swant to our nation's capital a couple of weeks ago to participate in the APPA legislative fly-in that they do from year to year. It's a different place than it has been in years past, and the topics are a little bit more intense, a little more complex, particularly around some of the familiar things, but which seem unfamiliar. Municipal bonds, for example, and whether they can continue to be tax-free and so forth, because it seems like everything is on the agenda and anything is possible. And so the conversations seemed to have a little more intensity to them as we were going through them.
What was your sense of those discussions?
The sense of those discussions is we need to stay tuned. We need to stay in tune, and we need to pay attention. We had good meetings. I participated with Senator Klobuchar and with Congressman Peterson in those conversations, and while they assured us of their continuing support in our positions on those topics, I think they were wise in their recognition of the change of scenery around there, and that we need to pay attention to the details. So as we move on, we need to just do our homework and our due diligence as a board, and continue to call on Bill and our suppliers to provide us with the best information that we can have on a timely basis so that we can see things coming down the road.
One of the items that interested me was a potential sale of the power providers.
Yeah, and
any discussion on that?
And again, that would be the sale of like the hydro facilities and so forth for the folks out in the public there. Nothing specific, only that anything's possible. And again, it's an old topic that has never gotten a foothold. It's never had any traction at all. But given the circumstances of this administration and their seeming willingness to try any idea to at least run up a flagpole and see what kind of attention it gets, we need to pay attention to those.
Well, CNN at least is reporting today that the intention is the dismantling of the federal government as we know it.
Yeah.
And so that is going to raise some interesting questions vis-a-vis power grid.
You know, does the federal government need to be in the energy business? And for some of us, we believe that they do, because we paid for it already. You know, to face the possibility that those facilities would be sold to the highest bidder, and then we treated as customers of a new energy enterprise with whatever the pricing might be is
a new for-profit
really
entity.
that's really kind of frightening.
Well, especially when 50% of our energy comes from those federal hydro projects, which are cost-based. And like if Commissioner Anderson said, if they go to, the highest bidder, then our rates would go up significantly for 50% of our power.
Would our agreements that we have actually allow that, or would they have to honor the existing agreements? Because we didn't just sign a 40-year agreement.
We just signed an agreement till, 2057. Those agreements, however, don't have the rates. The rates are set annually, just like we set rates to our customers. So if something happened where they would have to raise rates, they would raise rates, and then we actually have a 90-day out if we decide to go somewhere else. However, anything else is going to be much
But
more
then you're at the
expensive.
whim of the marketplace, which has happened before.
Because what's the rate difference right now? Is it about 2.8 cents per kilowatt hour on the water and 7.4 on the coal?
Yeah, I mean, it's roughly 6 cents and 3 cents. So I mean, it's about half is what we're getting with the hydro. So the math isn't that complex, but it's it's half the price.
Okay?
It was a good couple of days, though, and I came out of it, I guess, somewhat solemn. Generally, we come out of those meetings assured that we have our typical friends in place, and we know who we can call. But I think we have our work cut out for us to stay on top of this stuff. So that's the essence of the report. There are a number of really terrific documents online at APPA's website if you want to read more into the details on these things. The briefing papers were excellent. And again, those are available online if you want to look at them.
Thank you. Anybody else? I guess I'd be remiss if at the very least I didn't congratulate the Moorhead Spuds hockey team for getting second place in the state of Minnesota, which quite frankly is a terrific result. Not everybody's happy with that result, but it's a terrific result. And Heidi and I were both last week able to see the Horizon Middle School production of The Wiz, which was incredible. If anybody saw it, it was wonderful. We have so many wonderful things that our local students are involved in this community. We should be very grateful, and everybody's been doing a great job. So hats off to everybody in the Moorhead school system. Anybody else? Bill?
I don't have any reports other than what's in the packet.
Okay.
Ken?
Yes, John?
Bill, if you could, I don't know if all the commissioners know that we had a couple of recent retirees, so maybe you want to just inform everybody of that. And then also last month we talked about acquiring some property out south, and we talked about a way we can establish values. And I don't know if there's any progress or any update you could give us on that.
Well, I'll go with the first one you mentioned first. We had Pat McCann, one of our linemen, who retired after probably 30 years of, about 30 years of service. And Marie McCann, who's our one of our customer account specialists, also retired, and she was probably 16 years. So husband and wife retired at the same time, and one is a lineman, and one is a customer account specialist. So we've got advertisements going out on both of those positions to fill. So we'll be doing that. So on the other item, we have not had any meetings. The gentleman that we're going to be meeting with is coming back from down south in early April. So we'll do something there.
Okay. That brings us down to item 8E, which should obviously make Ralph happy, and that's a discussion of the report on sludge residuals management plan. Are you taking this one, or somebody from staff?
Oh, I'm just listening. I'm all hyper here right now.
Okay. You're all ears?
I just love sludge ponds.
Yeah.
Love it.
Chris Knutson, Water Division Manager. First, just to preface before we get too far down the road, I just want you to think of this plan as kind of a starting point, not the ending point, and not really a critical decision point at this time. This is really an investigation of future options for what we do with sludge residuals. So first, a little bit of history on why we did the study, what sludge residuals are, and kind of what the future directions could potentially be. We produce sludge residuals as part of our water treatment plant process. So as we soften water, we produce what are called sludge residuals, which are composed of lime and other substances. Back in 2015, MPCA decided that lime sludge could no longer be stored indefinitely as a beneficial use. So what does that mean to MPS? Why is it an impactful decision? What we've done in the past 20 years or so plus is actually take those lime solids, pump them to ponds that are located actually in red on the diagram on the screen. We pump those residuals out to the ponds, and we actually store them indefinitely. The decision in 2015,
We have them.
oh, they have them? Okay. The decision in 2015 was impactful in that we can no longer continue basically our current MO for sludge handling. So what are our future directions? Our future directions, we have a couple options. If we can continue to pump our solids and sludge out to those ponds, however, within a 3-year time period, we'd have to actually extricate that sludge and take it to a landfill. So basically pump it all out there, take it out by truck, and bring it to a landfill. Some of the other options we have are basically compressing those solids on site and then transporting those solids to a landfill. So as part of the plan, we really wanted to look and evaluate the 20-year life cycle costs for all of those potential options and some of the different flavors of those options. And what we came up with is that really the most economical long-term approach to sludge handling will be the construction of some type of sludge residuals facility, so a sludge plant on this physical site near the water treatment plant. So if you look on Table 1, you'll see a estimated 20-year life cycle cost at about $11.5 million. The initial construction cost of such a plant would be in the $5.5 million range. So the intent of the report and why we brought this report to you is because the $5.5 million initial construction is a pretty significant dollar amount for looking into the future. And it's actually going to be pretty soon that we'll need to make a decision on this, probably in the 2019-2020 range in terms of when we'll need to make a decision, when we'll need to construct this facility. Took a look at some of there's actually a few of these types of facilities locally. I took a look at the one in Fargo. Fargo wastewater plant actually has one. Fargo water treatment plant has one. I've looked at both of those. And just kind of projecting where the facility might be. I don't know if you have the facility layout. This is kind of a very early preliminary sludge plant layout, if you will. So you'll notice just northwest of the water treatment plant, the new water treatment plant, there's a new sludge treatment plant located kind of on its own next to the road. That's about the approximate size of what that sludge handling facility would look like. Again, cost of about $5.5 million. We'd have to reroute some of the existing sludge piping around the plant to get it there. And once we get it there, we'd obviously have costs of transporting it, so we'd have to truck it to Clay County landfill, likely. So we'd have some transportation costs there and probably some additional staffing costs. So
How many trucks per day?
probably in the range of 2 or so trucks per day. And you can store it in roll-offs kind of as you wait for trucks. So
So would we be looking at acquiring our own trucks, our own driver for that purpose?
that's typically how most folks do it. Fargo Water Treatment Plant does that. Fargo Wastewater Treatment Plant also does that. The things that we have to look a little closer at are kind of developing a relationship with Clay County in terms of landfilling this material. It's not a material that they really want in the landfill, so we'll have to, we did a chemical analysis of the sludge. It is capable of being landfilled. However, it's hard on the machines that they use to compact the trash. So we'll have to have some discussions in terms of rates, and probably some type of agreement with Clay County, and we haven't had any discussions yet. That's kind of next on the docket for what we need to do looking forward.
Would it make sense to look at whether or not we should find a way to have the current sludge ponds designated a landfill? Or is that,
That would handle the existing sludge, but it wouldn't handle
Additional.
the additional sludge. So if we wanted to continue sending sludge out there, we'd have to remove it within 3 years' time.
so do we have to remove the stuff that's in there right now as well?
We don't. That sludge is grandfathered in, essentially, so we can still continue to leave it. If we ever need the space, we'll have to move it and landfill it at some point.
What's the reason why the state of Minnesota took the position it did and is now ordering virtually everybody in the world to go out and find a new way to handle sludge?
It's a good question. I mean, I think if you think of the scale of Moorhead versus the scale of other utilities like St. Paul or Minneapolis and how they deal with sludge, I would just say there's a variety of disposal methods that have been employed over the years, some of which have pretty significant detrimental impacts to the environment. And so PCA was really trying to lump these materials into a consistent manner of handling and basically enforce that manner of handling to all the water utilities. So it's definitely going to add some expense to our bottom line because pumping the sludge out to our existing ponds is a lot, and just leaving it is tremendously cheaper than the alternative that we're going to be forced into. So.
I mean, are you looking at the possibility of contamination when we've got clay soils here? I mean, there's a part of me that says that doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah. It's a statewide regulation.
Okay? Sort of like a bureaucratic answer from the state of Minnesota. Go ahead.
Just a couple of clarifications here. So we would need to get a authorization or approval from the landfill before we could start
Correct.
doing this here. So that would probably be one of the first things we need to accomplish.
Yep,
Okay.
that is correct.
All right.
Do they have adequate space for that?
I believe they do. I mean, it's not a huge space issue. It's just that the material is corrosive. So when those compactors get on, it's hard on the metal components. It's corrosive and it's kind of gritty. It's kind of sandy in a way. Some of it can be.
And we ran into some issues with the Clay County landfill when we were doing demolition, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly, on the power plant. Space issues and materials issues. So how complex are our discussions going to have to be with the solid waste people in Clay County?
We have, like I said, we haven't initiated any conversations yet at this point. We have a little bit of time, but it's a pretty immediate need that we need to address
Let's
that.
say, for example, they say no. Then Rolf's choice seems to be an interesting one to look at.
Yeah,
I mean, whether we can create our own landfill, so to speak.
yeah.
So how much longer can we actually deposit into the sludge ponds currently?
We've got about 2 to 3 years of capacity, so we may have to do something in the interim. We had $900,000 budgeted in this 2017 budget year to do something with it at this point. We didn't know kind of where the sludge plan would take us when we went into the budgeting season, so we're kind of saying we'd rather put that $900,000 towards the construction of a new plant than construct some additional ponds that would just have to be excavated anyway. So we'd basically build the ponds and then 3 years later have to pull the sludge out. It just didn't really pencil out for us.
So everything that we're pumping in right now will have to come out?
Not under our existing ponds. If we construct, so basically
ponds
our
we have to.
existing ponds are grandfathered in, but the moment we construct a new pond, the moment we run out of capacity, the second that sludge touches that pond, it's got to come out in 3 years.
3 years later. So how much do we have on the existing ponds? We have how much, 2 to 3 years of
Yeah,
capacity?
2 to 3 years.
Okay, so we have to do something in 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Dave has a question, then Heidi has a question.
What's the lifetime of your solution, of the
The-
plan?
Probably the design life of the plant is 40 to 50 years. You'd have to do periodic maintenance,
But
of
that's
course,
also going to be based upon the capacity of the solid waste facility, is it not?
I would think.
I
And
guess.
you're going to have the equipment here to do whatever it is you want to do in terms of packaging the
Right,
sludge, so to
right.
speak. But then,
The volume issue with the landfill.
I mean, no matter what we're going to do, either we're filling a pond and moving it, or we're moving it and moving it. I mean,
Right.
It's, all we're
Yeah.
doing is moving it from point A to point B, sort of.
Well, with the caveat that it's compressed solids, so it's more of a cake.
So
than-
if we have a place to put it, then we've got 40 years under this plan.
Right. Just under the MPS infrastructure standpoint, I'm not sure of the landfill capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something that we'll need to address.
If we have a place to put it, right?
Yeah.
Heidi, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Chris, have you looked at what research is out there on reuse of sludge? I know that it's looked at as in cement and to mix in with cement and some other stuff. What is your thought on looking at?
We're exploring that. There are folks out there that sell lime sludge. And in certain circumstances, it depends on the soil conditions of the area that you're in. So St. Cloud, for example, sells their solids, and it's a desirable additive to the soil. Here, it's more difficult. So if we're looking into some potential arrangements that we can make to people that might actually want it. I don't think we're going to be able to sell it. I think it would be just that they would take it for us.
Okay.
But
But it is something that
it's
you would need.
if we were able to find somebody, that would be the most desirable outcome, absolutely, because we're going to have to pay the landfill to take it on a quantity basis, no question.
But finding somebody who wants it
Right.
would be a win-win.
And does that only resolve the issue of the landfill, but not of the issue of the compression, right? Would they take the sludge, or would they?
They'd have to take the compressed, yeah, you
compress? So
can't.
we still have to build the plant to compress it.
Correct, yep.
What you're saying is that there's no easy alternative,
No.
or
The easy
no cheap
alternative
alternative.
would be what we're doing right now, just pumping it out there and leaving it if the PCA rule didn't exist. That is the cheapest, best way to do it, but we can't continue to do that anymore.
So you say in the St. Cloud area, there's a market for sludge cakes?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so,
Not going there,
not going there?
not going there.
I know you want to.
So can you stretch the 3 years capacity in the existing ponds?
That's what we're looking at. That's the hope, is that, if we're teetering on capacity, that we can basically pump out some of the existing sludge, bring it to the landfill or wherever, and get rid of it. Basically buy ourselves a year or two to get the plant built, get the plant up and running, and then get whatever arrangement we need with Clay County or other for disposal of the.
So basically, we need to come up with $5.5 million in the next 3 years to build the
Correct.
press.
Yep. And we've already incorporated it, I believe, into 2020 is the target date for construction. That was a late add to the budget, but what we haven't done is really identify the appropriate funding for it. So we're looking at using drinking water revolving fund for it. However, other utilities have struggled to get that type of project funded, so I think it'll be a challenge. But I'm hoping that we could get a good outcome on that. There's also some issues right now with drinking water revolving funds. I believe the state has to pass the bonding bill to get those approved, and so all the projects that are in line for 2017 drinking water revolving fund are on hold until that's done.
And probably a stupid question again, but is there a way for us to not use lime? Do we have to use lime? Are there alternatives there? Can we use less lime? Or is that really the only way to do it?
The only other alternative is a membrane plant, and so you'd be constructing a membrane plant.
To the tune of what, 25 million?
125.
125?
Yeah.
Okay.
No cheap way to get good water. John?
Is there any way to increase the capacity of our existing ponds?
Not really. They're just built such that you can't really slope it up, is kind of what you're thinking, basically build higher berms.
Yep.
Yeah, just the stability there, it's not really possible.
Okay. The next question, just for clarification here, I believe we had proposed to either acquire land or we did acquire land to build some sludge ponds. So you're proposing that purchase has been completed?
is no longer needed.
That's all I needed.
So,
Is that where the 900,000 comes in?
The 900,000 was actually for construction of additional ponds on the existing site, so no land acquisition as part of that. Like I said, we've deferred that cost. At this time, we wouldn't have any need for any additional land.
So regardless of what decision we make going forward as to what we're going to do, whether it's Rolf's Sludge Cakes or some other proposition, we don't have to move forward with that acquisition. Is that what you're telling us?
That's correct. We do not.
Is this something that we could be looking at jointly with, for example, the city of Fargo, to collaborate with Fargo? They've got sludge, we've got sludge.
But they have the press already, right?
Yeah, they already have an existing press, so we'd have to basically pump all of our solids to their treatment plant on 13th Avenue. It's something we could investigate, but, I mean, the gist of it is people don't want this stuff. Fargo doesn't want it. Fargo's landfill doesn't want it. They don't want to deal with it. Nobody really likes to deal with the sludge in the first place. So, I mean, I'd happily entertain the conversation and I can initiate it, but just generally, people don't want to acquire more sludge.
So if nobody wants our sludge, which could include Clay County, by the way,
Right.
then what did the state of Minnesota propose in terms of an end site for the stockpiling of sludge?
That's a good question.
You keep telling me that, but you have no answer.
I don't have a good answer for that question. I wish I did. I
I mean,
mean,
it doesn't make any sense to force us to do this when, in fact, nobody wants it and there's no place to take it to.
right. Yeah,
Right.
and that's the
I think
difficulty with.
the next discussion that has to be had is with Clay County to see whether they
Yeah.
would be willing to take it, what
Yeah.
are the conditions on that, and then,
They may have to do some additional site acquisition themselves that we may have to join in with them.
Correct. So I think
somebody may want to
they're-
call Avon, maybe they can make mud mess of it or something, I don't know.
You weren't going to go there.
I was going to go there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the first thing, and then from a budgeting perspective, Dave, I think we really need to look at what that means. I mean, if we have 3 years, right, we need to come up with $5.5 million to build it.
And then how we fund it is a big
Yeah.
question, too.
John, do you have a question?
I'm thinking you're going to have more than a $5.5 million expenditure. You're going to have trucks and equipment and
Yep.
expenses, and you're probably talking 10 before it gets done.
Your O&M costs are going to be,
Well, it's 11 and a half total, right? I mean, that's what the thing
20
says
years.
here.
okay?
And some land, because it's gonna force us to look north of the water treatment plant.
Yeah, but we have that in the budget already anyway.
Okay. Any other good news you'd like to spread?
Not on this item.
Yes?
Since Chris is available, I noticed in one of the billings that we paid about $45,000 for the progress of with the update of the lab remodeling. Could you just kind of give us a quick review of how that's going and where we're at with that?
Where that's going, we're about halfway done with the lab remodel project. Completion date's about middle to end of May. Reached out to some of the other commercial labs, and we're still working on developing the feasibility study regarding setting it up as a commercial certified lab. So we're still working on that piece, but the project itself is about half done, coming along good.
Okay, anything further? Excuse me, could I have a motion, please, to accept that report?
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carries.
Is everybody in agreement that this was a riveting discussion? Thank you.
I'm assuming that that wasn't in the form of a motion. It may have died for lack of a second. We're on to item 12, please, which would be the award the bid for the pilot filter skid unit. And I believe that Mr. Regala asked that we take this off. So,
Just a little bit of a clarification here. I believe that we had, and I'm trying to get to the page, so bear with me, $150,000 approved for this project, and now we're looking at a potential cost of $248,000 is what you're proposing, or what the estimate or bid came in. So a couple just clarifications if we could have as far as rationale for the difference in the cost, and also if the city of Fargo is participating in this, are they aware of this and they have agreed to the additional share?
Sure. Just a little bit of history before I dive into the financial component to that question. Back in December, we actually approved the joint agreement with Fargo regarding this particular project. And the project, again, is to basically build a small filter that would mimic a new type of filtration media for the water treatment plant. The agreement basically specified that Fargo and Moorhead would split the engineering costs associated with designing the small plant and then the construction cost associated with building it. So we've been working on plans and specs. They were actually approved on February 14th, and then we just recently bid on March 7th. The $247,000 is actually a cost that will be split with the city of Fargo. So our cost is one half of that, so about $123,000. You're correct, the budget is $150,000 in total. So up to this point, we have that $123,000 plus $12,500 in engineering fees associated with design. So we're still under that $150,000 mark for the year because we're splitting the construction cost.
I thought the total project cost was going to be 150 versus our share, so that's where I wanted to just make clarification.
Yep. We may be, it was over the estimate pretty significantly. So we had planned to do a pretty substantial study associated with the pilot. We're going to be working on an RFP for engineering services for that one-year study, that initial study. We'll have to kind of bring that back in terms of an approval, and likely we may exceed the budget by, we'll have to deal with it, but we may exceed the budget by $20,000 or so just because the bid came back so high for this initial project.
And then just as far as the rationale, why there was such a difference?
It's a pretty limited market in terms of who actually builds these. They're really specialized. And the last one they did for the city of St. Cloud, they lost money on. So they've only really done one before this. Turned out well, or the company that bid it lost money. Because the project cost is over $100,000, we have to open bid it. They were the only ones that bid it. We reached out to multiple vendors, but in most cases, folks want to rent these type of units out. They don't want to build them and sell them because there just isn't a lot of profit to be made, and there's not that many folks that do it.
So even with the additional cost, you're still making a recommendation that we go forward with this project?
I'm still recommending that we approve it. I spoke with Fargo several times, and they're moving forward. They're comfortable moving forward contingent upon our approval. So despite the fact that we were over the estimate, all parties are comfortable with recommendation of award.
Okay. Could I have a motion, please, with regard to item 12?
Making motions acceptable.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That brings us down to item 13, which is the water tower lease agreement with our friends at Sprint.
Just the clarification I was looking for as far as that, the lease agreement that was drafted, is that drafted by our attorney or their attorney or whose attorney?
That was drafted by the city attorney, reviewed by John Bolger.
Okay, he's given us our sign off.
Yep.
That's good. Okay, that was just clarification I was looking for.
Okay. Any further questions, comments? Could I have a motion on item 13, please?
I move approval of item 13.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Approve the same side. And just as an aside, one of the radio stations I was listening to this morning came up with the bright idea that we should paint the Oakport water tower to look like a sugar beet. I'm just saying. Item 14 is to approve the revised professional and supervisory employee handbook and rescind a policy on employer-provided vehicles. Bill?
Yeah, and I'll have Nancy come up here in case there's any questions, but this is just an update on our professional and supervisory employee handbook. There's some modifications to how we deal with the range of, how our division managers use their vehicles to travel to and from work, and some other just typographical revisions to this. So basically, we've changed it so that division managers of Moorhead Public Service can take their vehicles if they live within 20 miles of the city of Moorhead. Previously, it was just within the city of Moorhead. So that's the change. The HR committee has reviewed that. We're basically, rescinding the policy as well. So that's been incorporated into the handbook. I don't know if Nancy had anything to add or not on that one.
That does summarize, but I'll take any questions.
It was just a clarification as far as my memory when we were in the HR committee that we discussed as far as who would be making the approval of this. And I don't see anything specifically related to how that approval process, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but I think the discussion here was that that would either be brought to the HR committee or the commission or commissioners in a whole to make that approval, but I wasn't sure if that's what
Yeah,
our
I
discussion.
That's my
mean-
recollection as well.
I think basically with this, division managers would have the ability to do that if they're a division manager, and there wouldn't be any further approval that would be necessary.
Isn't 20 miles 20 miles?
Right.
Oh, and again, I thought the discussion was that there would be a sign-off process that either
Yeah.
the HR committee would be
I mean,
brought to
right-
speed of that. And
Right now, the way it works is, if they live within the city of Moorhead, they get to take the vehicle home.
Okay.
And it's for emergency use, so they're ready to go on an emergency call, that type of thing. This is just an expansion of that, so we don't approve it now, so I wouldn't think we'd approve it as long as they live within that 20 miles.
Okay.
And I mean, we would probably, from an administrative standpoint, take a look at whether or not the 20 miles does meet the 20-mile intent, and I'd probably just give the okay.
Well, and again, the reason why I bring it up is because I thought that was our discussion, that there would be
Yeah, I think-
some supporting documentation of who would be the approver of that.
Yeah, I think we discussed that, but I think that was when we were looking at other options.
It wouldn't hurt for us to look at that as an HR committee on an annual basis anyway, I wouldn't think, to look at those policies. The other one I was looking at is a reimbursement for educational expenses. Are we doing any of that at this time? Do we have some students out there that we're assisting with the process?
Yes, we have,
Good.
we currently have, I think, 2 professional and supervisory employees that are going to school and getting advanced degrees.
Okay. And then, please explain to everybody the group health insurance matters, so it makes sense, and that I can understand it. Not
Okay.
necessarily in that
Okay,
order.
just the change on there?
Yeah.
All we did in this document is just to be consistent with some of our other literature that's out there. We just moved the employee E plus children up to a different line, so all of our tables match.
Okay,
But what does happen overall with group health insurance is that Moorhead Public Service contributes up to a fixed dollar amount for group health insurance each year, and then the employees pick up the difference between MPS's contribution according to these tables and the actual premiums themselves.
anybody have any other comments or questions on this? Could I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, is there a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. We don't have to go into closed session, I'm assuming.
we
Upcoming
do not.
meeting, pardon?
No, we do not.
Okay, Public Service Commission on March 28th if needed, but I'm assuming if we're going back to what we discussed previously, there will be a planning session at the very least.
Yeah. We're planning on just continuing with the planning session that we had started back in January. So we'll be kind of taking over where we left off on electric planning issues. So having a discussion about that. Yeah.
Okay? Anything further?
The Budget Committee, we're expecting to have a meeting prior to the next commission meeting, which is on April, what is it, 11th? April 11th.
Okay.
So just so the Budget Committee knows, we'll probably have a discussion there. Some of it has to do with some of the water, long-range planning items, and then we've also got some electric items. So we've got a busy budget season ahead of us, hit some in the spring, and then hit it hard in the fall.
Okay?
One request for the budget meeting, Chris, if there's a way for us to show how many miles we have replaced and the number of breaks up or down, I think that's an interesting item to have from a water main replacement standpoint, just to see where we're going with this, whether we can actually see an impact. Sorry.
John?
Heidi, with the information about the sludge ponds, I'm sure the rest of the city leaders would like to be aware of that significant cost that's looking down. So if you could share that, make sure they're aware of that.
I'm assuming if need be, that Rolf would be willing to discuss the item with them.
I'll be the sludge master.
I would think no less of you. Okay, anything further?
Nope.
Okay, this meeting's adjourned.